Okay, back here with the final episode of the Parius Wars Almoravid series. Someone explained to me very wisely how this situation over here would work. They said the siege marker would go down first because the disband part of the protocol, whatever it is, on the sheet actually isn't until later. So most of the time, if you have a question, it seems like, oh man, this is so confusing. I don't know why this is so confusing. It's not. It's just the way you see it. That happens to me all the time, which is why it's great to ask people. I explain board games to people all the time, and they ask me these questions, and I'm like, that's pretty obvious. I feel like if you would have listened or read to whatever I was saying, sometimes I feel like we get that way when we're explaining board games we know, and but to the other people, it's like, well, I didn't know. I had no idea. It's the same way here. So it's nice to be ignorant sometimes, so to see maybe from the other side how you're perceived. Anyways, the decks are stacked out here. I can show you the Art of War cards. First with Christians, they got a camp attack, very similar to the one we saw earlier, and then a swollen river, which is play to block a march or block a void battle. Now, if you'll remember, they've had this card for a while, which would have been useful if earlier Almundir would have retreated, because they could have, they could have ran him off and then really gotten him. They could have even gotten the city. Anyways, it lets them storm. They could have done that. And they also have the arid terrain. So they've got a couple of pretty good cards here. I don't know if there's a hand limit or not. To really go at the Muslim player here. The other one, these are not actually that great. This one only applies if Yusuf or Sur are on the map, which they are not, so it's actually useless. And then the other one is, this one's actually a little bit useful. They can remove a conquered marker from an empty town or add 2 jihad in a taifa with Al-Mutamid, or the other ones, but Al-Mutamid's the only one on the board. So that actually could be useful if they can get it off before any of the Christian lords make their way in. They've already got to place a jihad thanks to moving Yusuf and Sur, so they put one there. They're going to put another one there if they can, just to slow that advance that the Christians have. And also, in another one of the forums, I asked about this place here, and if, do you get a conquered marker or whatever for a jihad? No. So basically the way it works is, and this makes sense. Let's imagine that the Christians were at war with, this typhus lord here. And they conquered this place and this place and this place. Anyways, whenever they agreed with the typhus lord to pay them basically a ransom, is kind of what it is, or, a tribute, they keep the places that they conquered. They don't get to keep the places they didn't, So, we conquered this. It's kind of de facto a part of their territory now. So down here, this area is paying them tribute. Just because they've, quote-unquote, freed it down here doesn't mean they get to keep it or anything like that. So that's how someone explained it in one of the forums. That was very helpful to me. So with that said, the victory points as they stand are, let's take a look here, 13.5 to 14.5. Of course, it was 13.5 to 13, but the 1.5 for the Almoravid Lords. I mean, just think about it. They've placed 1, 2, 3, 4. I think they've gotten 6 victory points off of that alone. I mean, that has really kept them in this. They could always, they could use them if they would have had them the whole time. I don't know how much different things are, but they're going to get a victory point up here at some point. And then, of course, they're going to try and take these. If there's only time for one thing to happen. There's only time for either the Muslims to take it or the Christians to stop them. But there's not enough time for the Muslims to take it and the Christians to retake it. So if they succeed in taking it, I think it's over. If they stop them, obviously, it's over. So, it's not actually true. The Christians still have to make up some victory points somewhere. And there's no place really to do it. They can remove the jihad markers in here, and there's 2 over here, but I don't know if they have time. So we'll see, but they're gonna flow down towards them. So let's hop in here. Christians up first. Abu Allah is up next. He is going to do another siege to try and finally get this roll to work out. So it's just the same as always, 50-50. Here we go. And it's a 1, finally. So that'll put a conquered marker down, but the ravaged marker is going to flip over, so it's only technically a half-point spread. Ooh, wrong way. So they'll go up by a victory point. They'll lose half a victory point, and then the other ones will gain half a victory point. So let me make sure that's right, because they were on third. Okay, yeah, it should be like this, I think. 14-15, I believe. I'll go back and recheck the numbers, but they were on 14.5 up to 15, 13.5 to 14. Yeah, okay. So that is finally done, which means that they can start making their way over, and we'll see whether or not the Christians kind of play those cards to slow them up, because of course they don't need 3 for Toledo, but they need 3 to place siege markers, and obviously this they would like for this to surrender, so they want to get as many there as possible, as quickly as possible. So they'll think about it during the layoff between their turns. So the Christians played that Swollen River card to block Abu Allah from making his way over. The other one makes the opponent feed their forces, and it was feeding 2 lords. So they would rather pull that over here in Toledo when there's more of a use to it. Let's speed 2 marching lords. Okay, well, it doesn't really matter. Anyways, Alvar, basically, one of the things I forgot to mention was everybody beefed up down here. Everybody basically went all out, picked up lots of stuff, and they're basically taking the first couple of cards to supply up and then move out. So Alvar is ready now for that moving out, and he's going to play the surprise card to, upon march to enemy stronghold, where no lord, place 2 siege there, then storm with walls -1. He already has a capability that lets him extend storm 2 extra rounds. So he can go 4 rounds with this, and he's going to go 1, 2, 3. Playing this card means he'll pop down 2 siege markers, and then he's gonna storm with an advantage. So he's basically trying to clear the path for Alfonso. He could have chosen Guadalajara or Madrid, but he went with Guadalajara because it'll be easier. It's only a castle instead of town, so it's a little less stiff as far as the resistance goes. So we'll take him and Garcia, who are pretty much just down to the lean forces of knights and men-at-arms, and then load up the garrison. And the garrison for a castle is 1 men-at-arms and 1 militia, and they both have missiles. So, here you go. And the militia. Now, of course, he has to go here. And I guess we get to pick. I might actually put we'll put Alvar in front. Okay. So the beginning of the storm round. No one's conceding. So missiles from the defenders. There are missiles from the defenders. It's 1 total. They have 2 siege works. So I think with the walls, with the the siege works. Is it 1 per siege work? So it's like walls of 2? I don't know what the advantage of having more than 1 is as far as storming goes. Let me look that up real quick. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's 1 for each. They have basically walls of 2. So they will roll 1 hit. First of all, they get past the walls. And the 1 hit... Well, see, I don't really know. It's a half a hit and a half a hit. But it's a half a hit of crossbow and a half a hit of regular bow. So I think, to me, it's like it's 2 hits. Because they both round up, because it's different types. So I'm going to do that instead. I think that's what it is. So it's 2 hits, both of which can be blocked on a 1 to 2. So this is the crossbow, and this is the regular bow. The regular bow is blocked, so now the crossbow will go in and he'll select his target. The crossbow, I think, reduces armor by a number. Yeah, -1, and you get to select your target. So they're going to try and take out a sergeant, because that'll only put their armor down to 1 to 2 rather than try and take out the knight. Well, it's a 1, so it wouldn't have mattered. And so that is useless. So now we go on to missiles of the defenders, of which there are none. And then melee, all stronghold defenders. So that's 2 hits from those 2. 1 from the men-at-arms, and 1 or half from the militia, which rounds up. So 2, those will go off of the walls first. So 1 to 2. And 1 will make it through. And then armor, they're going to assign it to the knight for a 1 to 4, because his is reduced down to 1. 1 to 4 to 2, so it's blocked. And now the attackers will go. So it's going to be 1 hit for the knight, 1 hit for the sergeant, another hit for another sergeant, and another hit for the men-at-arms. So 4 hits total. You can only ever do 5 in a siege. It's the maximum you can do. So 4. These are all going to roll on the walls of 1 to 3 because of the card, the surprise card. 1 to 3. Wow. 3 of those are blocked. That is unfortunate. Really wanted to get this done in 1 round, so we would have to minimize casualties. So then the 1, they're going to place on militia. So 1 here. And it's not blocked. So that will go away. And then we start over. We can go up to 4 rounds here. So missiles, it's a 1 hit for the missiles. And the missile will have to go through the wall first. It's not blocked by the wall. So they're going to go for the sergeant again. 1 to 2. It's a 5, so it's not blocked. That'll rout him. And then defenders, 1. We've got to go off the walls. It's a 5. They'll take it off the knight, 1 to 4. It's a 1, so it's blocked. And now they will attack on their own. So that's 3 hits this time rather than 4. They're all going to go off the walls of 1 to 3. 2 get through. And now 2 hits. 1 to 3 is the block for men-at-arms for the armor. And 1 does make it through, hitting and defeating the siege. The resistance of the siege. Oh, sorry, 6 hits, by the way. Awesome. So now we can go into losses really quickly. I'll show you that just to see if he loses this one guy here. So we got to roll for his armor, basically, which is a 1 to 3. It's a 4, so unfortunately we do lose that in the process. So he's a little bit weaker now, but we got it out of the way. And then because we actually did storm it, I think even though we don't get to conquer it, I still think we get to decide if we want to sack it or not. I don't know if we will. Let's see, what would that even get us? It would get us a coin and a provender. It's actually pretty useful. So I'll make that determination, but basically the purpose of this was to clear the path a little bit. So now when Alvar comes through, he could sit here, bypass, let Alvar through probably, and then they can, that'll basically, it's one person's holding the door for the other. So this will take them deck down by half a victory point, so it's now 14 to 15 and a half, and the path is a little bit more clear as the Christians are starting their like chain link attack down to Toledo. So a little bit of quick commentary here. It's over to the Muslim player, and the thing is, the way they stack their deck, they don't have another Abu Allah card until 3 more down. Because they expected, to get him there, and then they were just going to pound the pavement with Al-Mutamid to try and break that siege. Have everybody there and have him swinging. So they didn't put another one for a while. So when that card, Swollen River, stops him from getting over to aid, they're now not going to have any more cards of his to play to do this siege, basically. So without being able to place any more, they can either attempt to storm, which is suicidal. They don't have, their forces are very irregular. They don't have the strength to take the city, to be frank. So they have to remember that they're not chasing this game, they're ahead in this game. So they don't have any way of putting any more jihad markers on the board to increase their score, but they can attempt to hold on to the jihad markers they have. So probably what they're going to do is just forget Toledo. They're not going to be able to take it. Probably ravage it to get the victory, half a victory point, and then leave. From there, they can either go north and stake out here, which probably isn't a great idea. Go and fight up there, which isn't a terrible idea, but it's also not a great idea. What they'll probably end up doing is come in here to Calatrava and just sit in that castle. Like, if they want to siege them down and stuff, let them. Probably. I'm not sure. Part of me wants to just kind of stay mobile and strike, let them divide their forces and try and take out as many of these jihad markers, because that's really the only way. They can't get to anywhere else to take it out and get a conquered marker. The only thing they can do is they need to get rid of 1, 2, they really need to get rid of 3 jihad markers, which is tough, and there's 3 right there. So, I'm not sure. I think, but see, the Christians don't know that. The Christians don't know the way things are stacked. So when they figure that out, they'll probably split up. But the Muslims are operating with more knowledge than the Christians have right now. So they'll probably ravage and supply up and wait and see what the Christians do and try and take this late, because they've got 3 cards in a row of Al-Mutamid. So they're in no rush, but they may just kind of bunker down because, like I said, they've got the point, and Abu Allah may go on a raid up and around. He may go up forage, ravage, over forage, ravage. Just get some ravage markers on the map to try and bump the score up. But you definitely are capped here with this Paria stuff going on. It's basically this whole corner has been knocked out, but unfortunately you can't use the coins you got from that to buy victory points. So just a little bit of a peek inside the mind of the Muslim player in this situation. One interesting thing occurred to me. The Al-Mutamid went ahead and ravaged, is that they could still make a surrender roll. Now, the rules say that you can't place more siege markers unless you are equal to the siege capacity, which is 3. So they can't place more, but they have a siege marker and a ravage marker. So in my mind, that means they can still roll. You could still roll with only 1 lord. You just need 3 rolls of, basically with 1 lord you can get 2. A ravage marker and a siege marker. So they can still make the roll. It says nothing in that section, to my knowledge, that you're not allowed to do that. It says surrender If the siege locale has no besieged lords, the besieging side may roll for surrender. It rolls a number of dice equal to the stronghold's VP value, 1, 2, or 3. If each die rolled less than or equal to the number of siege plus ravage markers, yada, yada, yada. Do the following. If you look up here, any besieging lord may use actions of his command card to advance a siege in the following order. But it doesn't say anything to my knowledge. I've looked in a few other areas. The only thing I see reference to as far as the number needed is to place more. If the besieging side has at least as many lords as the stronghold siege capacity. So I think they can still make a roll. Obviously it's low chance of success, but for this turn it's useless to do much of anything else. So I'm going to roll 3 dice and see if we can get 3 2s or 1s. 1, 2, 3. So close. So incredibly close. I saw the 1 and 2 first, and I didn't see the 3 until last. Oh man. That would have been game, set, match right there. So that fails. But, like I said, there wasn't really a thing that made much more sense to do with that turn, so it's worth a shot. Let me know if that's incorrect. In the end, it doesn't affect anything this time, and I doubt they'll do it again, but I don't see anything about it. Things are coming to a conclusion here, just about. Alfonso, had to do a bypass here in Madrid, which wasted a couple of commands. Got through to besieged the Muslim lords here in Calatrava, excuse me. And they decided to sit inside because they can't afford to lose those pieces. So they could have retreated out around this way and down, but they wanted to give it the best opportunity to hold on to these 3 points, because if they lose those 3 half points, the game's over. It doesn't matter that they also die with it, because they're already going to lose. So they went ahead and said, we'll hop in the fort. It's a fortress. So Alvar got stuck up here with the bypass, and they're out of cards for him, so he's out of action. Sancho's out of action. There was one really big missed opportunity up here with Abu Allah, and he had no provender at all, and he couldn't get any from here, so he said, I'm going to march up and ravage. And so he goes up. He has 3 commands. He spends 1 marching up there, the second one foraging, so he just needs to roll a 1 to 3. Well, he rolls a 4, so now he can't use his last remaining command to ravage. He has to use it to get provender. And if he fails the roll, then he's going to have to disband, which means his place will turn into Parius, and it wouldn't fully tip the game in their favor, but it would do they would still have to take a couple of places. What the Christians have decided to do is ravage instead of reconquer, or take out the jihad markers, because it's basically the same thing. You're getting a half a point rather than taking one away, and it takes a lot less time. So if he would have been removed, they could have gone around and maybe won a different way than what they're doing now, but it failed, because if he would have succeeded, that would have made it basically impossible for the Christians to catch up. They would have had to have sent Alfonso off on like a raid to go conquer a spot. Because right now, I think all they can do is tie. I think the best they can do is tie, and I don't know what happens if there's a tie. But if they want that to happen, they have to take Calatrava. So they are in the unfortunate situation of only having 1 siege marker. So they just don't have time. They could get a second one this turn, and then let Pedro attack next turn. And then they can go for 2 rounds, but they're kind of they know they're not going to succeed in 1 round. They'd have to take everybody out. So they're going to have to take everybody out this turn, and then next turn take everybody out again from the other one. They have to take out all of Almoravid and then all of the other guy that's there. So, you know, that's... none of it's great. You know, none of it is perfect. But it is, unfortunately, the way things are for them. So this pretty much just comes down to this. So the two of them will line up here against these two. The garrison will be in effect, and I believe it's 2 militia and 3 men-at-arms for a fortress. But let me check. Nope, 3 men-at-arms and 1 militia. So brutal. Not count even the forces that are going to be there from the Muslim lords. So already not a fun situation to be in. And we would have liked Alvar to lead this because he gets 2 extra rounds. But unfortunately he is not here. So I don't think this is even mathematically possible, any of it, because they're out of Alfonso cards, so they've got a Pedro one in here, which is basically just let him have another swing at it. Like I said, I don't know if it makes more sense to have 2 siege markers in attack if they go for 2 rounds, or if it does to do 2 twice. I don't really know. But there's just not another way. They can't run around and ravage other places, because the only place they could, there's only one available place. There's 2, but the other one's too far away, so they can't make up the difference. So they're just gonna have to go like this. So we're gonna start off with missiles for the defenders, which they do have plenty of. So they have 1.5 of crossbow and 1 of bow. So that's 4 total. So we'll do the crossbows first. They're going to get a 1 for the siege wall. So here's the crossbows first, rolling to be blocked by 1. None of them are. And we'll roll 1 for the bows. It's not blocked. So then now these 3 for the bows are going to, the crossbows are going to choose the 2 knights and a sergeant. So here's the 2 knights. They need 1 to 3 to block, and they both hit. Brutal, brutal, brutal. So here's a look at his board. And he's got a pretty good group here, but those 2 knights going down off the top doesn't make this easier. Then the other one will target the sergeant, so it's a 1 to 2. 2 actually is blocked, and then the bow, they get to assign, they'll do it to another sergeant, and it's blocked on a 1 to 3. Okay, so now it is defender stronghold, all stronghold defenders, which is not great. So it's 1, 2, 3.5 plus 4, 5, 6, 7.5, 8.5, or sorry, 1, 2, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 8. 8 hits, if I'm counting that correctly. Now, I believe they can do as many hits as they want. It says melee max 6 per lord. I don't know if that's attackers and defenders. I think it's everybody. So they can do 6, so they'll have 6 hits. And these can all be blocked by the walls of 1. So we'll roll them all. And none of them are blocked. So now they get to pick who is going to do the defending. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they have exactly 6. So they'll take 1 off the top and lose the serfs who are going to be gone. And they'll roll 1 against a sergeant. That is safe. They'll roll 1 against the other sergeant. That one is safe. They'll roll 1 against a man-at-arms. That one is safe. They'll roll 1 against the other man-at-arms. That one is safe. They'll roll 1 against a sergeant. That one is not safe. You can see that there. And then the other sergeant. It's safe. So they just lost 2 there, which is pretty big. So now they will actually get to respond, and they have 1, 2, 3.5, which will round up to 4. So 4 hits to distribute here. And they are all going to go against the walls of 1 to 4. And they are all blocked. So that means that, let's see, nobody's immediately rounded. If all attackers or defenders routed that size lose. Otherwise, if not in rounds so far equal siege marker, attackers lose. So they did absolutely nothing. I knew it was futile, but we had to do it. These 2. Both the knights are gone, and all 3 are gone, actually. So not only it's going to add insult to injury, all of them are gone. So that will pretty much do it, but I'm not even going to move anything because they're going to give it another swing in just a second. So we'll come over here, flip second to last card. They're going to pass because they're out of relevant cards. You know, they don't really have anybody else to. They've used literally everyone's cards because they only have 3 guys out there. And so then we'll flip over the last card for the Christians and the last possible chance, Pedro. So now they don't have any provender. They used it all. They need 3. I mean, they don't technically need 3. Because they have coin, and if people disappear after this, it doesn't matter. They don't lose anything by that happening, unlike the Muslims. So they could ravage. That would take them up to 15 points. So it would be 1 point away. You know, 1 point away. Pedro could. He actually has 2 command, which is awful. So in theory, if he say he had a larger command, he could run over and get another one, which would give him another half point. But it's not there. There's nowhere for it. So we'll just swap these around and go for everything because half, 1, we can tie. So they're gonna do this. Here's the forces all in all. You can see it's not quite as good as, it's pretty similar, but not quite as good as Alfonso's were. But they will try nonetheless. So it'll be missiles first, of which there are 4, 3 from the, there are 1.5, they're half, so 1.5, 2, and half from there. So there's 3 total, 2 of which are crossbows. So they're going to select a knight with 1, and that does barely manage to save him. They're going to target the knight again. That will get him. And then the bow, they're going to put on a sergeant, which also gets him, unfortunately. So now all defenders, it's going to be 1, 2, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7, 8 hits. Again, you can only do 6. So all of the, I forgot to roll those against the walls, actually. So let me just roll 2 dice quick. Oh, there's a 1. And let me roll for the other one. 2. So actually the knight is okay. My bad. Always remember to roll for protection. So now we're going to roll all 6 of these against the walls. 1 of them is blocked. So now 5. We'll do knight. Safe. Sergeant. Safe. Knight again. gone. Men-at-Arms, gone. And the Sergeant, he's also gone. So now they're down to these measly 2, which give them 1 attack, which will make it past the walls, and then they're going to try and block it with the Men-at-Arms. And they don't. So that goes away. But they still stand rather unscathed. And that means it will be over. Because when that's done, first of all, those guys would be disbanded. They could pay coin, I guess. 1 for each, and they would be okay. But it would go over here, they would pass, and then the game would end. We would go over here to game end. After all, prepare. Oh, sorry. End scenario award win to the highest victory points. So the highest victory points is the Muslim player. Right now by 2.5 points. Or 1.5 points, I guess. Yeah, 1.5. But let me go and check 5. If neither side is 1, if tied, the sides draw. So it would have literally been a draw if they would have taken that. So if they would have succeeded in that siege, taken those 3 out, they would have tied on 16, and it would have been a true draw. But as it stands, it is 14.5 to 16. They could have ravaged once to get it to 15, where it's only a 1-point gap, and they probably could have, if they wouldn't have tried to besiege it at all and just taken the loss earlier, they could have gotten to 15.5 and lost by 0.5 point. But there was never a path to actually win. Because they were so, whenever they committed everything up here, they were successful, but honestly, those guys sacrificing themselves to just be parias instead of Reconquista, that threw the whole thing under the bus for the Christians, because at that point there just wasn't enough time to catch up. Now, if we were playing to the end, I would have no doubt that the Christians were going to win. Probably the first thing that the Muslims would do was bring in the Almoravids, because they would be at the halfway point, and maybe they could salvage something, and they'd bring in El Cid as well. But the Christians would not obviously have been quite as aggressive in pursuing those guys down, and they also probably would have been more conservative and not hold themselves up here. But yeah, I think the Christians would have won with 1 more turn. They just didn't have enough cards, because they had to spend the first 2 cards of everybody, so Alfonso and Alvar, getting more supplies in and then moving, because they had to get from up here to down here. So there was not enough time, and that cost them. And you could take a look here. Maybe you see where something else could have gotten them the points. They were lucky that they didn't lose it earlier, but I don't see another place. They played defensive down here and hyper-aggressive up here. They probably couldn't have known what would have happened, but I don't think they would have succeeded over here. They wouldn't have, because it was Alfonso that took the guys out. They tried to do it without Alfonso, and they lost. Could they have regrouped with Sancho and gone down there? Probably not, because they couldn't have coordinated without a marshal. So, we probably could have sent Alfonso here instead, and then let the other guys come down, and then have a marshal of 3 to fight this. That probably would have been better from the start, but, once we got to the 3rd turn, I think it was kind of irreversible. They probably even had more luck than they should have by getting to take this out in the first place, but clever play by the Muslims, I guess, to have that go to Parias instead of Reconquista. I'm really not even sure an instance in which how you would get Reconquista. So, I get if you just start, a guy just came onto the board and he's 4 spaces out on the track. If we're here and he moves 4 spaces out, well, it's going to be pretty hard to get him down, I guess. But, if he's close at all, you could just purposely not feed him. I realize sometimes you can't purposely not feed him, but it seems like you would do everything in your power to get them off the board if you knew that you could give up 1 victory point instead of 6. That's a pretty big no-brainer. But it's also, once again, it's all time limited in the scenarios. So, in a campaign, you would just take each of the castles individually. You'd take, and then go for this one last. And then you would rack up tons of victory points. But in this situation, you kind of got to go for the jugular from the start. And again, I guess you didn't have to. You could have tried to take them, go here, and work their way down. But they had to occupy the guys down here. So I don't know. I would love to hear people's thoughts on their thought of the Parius and deciding to go with that rather than the Reconquista. I basically tanked 2 guys to save this game. Is that in the spirit of the game? Was that even correct? You guys can let me know. But I think it was the best move, unless I gamed it somehow. But let me know about that. And as far as the strategy goes, final thoughts. This game is incredible. If I had to pick between playing this one and playing Nevsky, I'd probably pick this one. I don't like one more than the other. I don't think one's better than the other. This one just, I'm trying to think of another game that's like this. There is, it's like a Twilight Struggle and Imperial Struggle. Those 2 games are very similar, but I like Imperial Struggle a little bit more because it's basically Twilight Struggle but with more bells and whistles. It's a little bit more complicated. For the People and U.S. Civil War is probably a better one. Both very good games, but I prefer U.S. Civil War because it's a little bit more complex. It's just got a little bit more edge to it. This one the same way. Now, if I was introducing someone, I would do Nevsky. There's not a lot less overhead, but there's a little bit more. But both fantastic games. I would like to play this again in the campaign length. Probably not on, actually recording it. I might, but I would like to do that again, in a campaign length, so that I think when you do it in the scenarios, you're never really getting the full spectrum, literally, because you're not playing the full game, but, it gives you the most accurate experience of the game, whereas the scenarios are meant, to be shorter and to be more bite-sized. So I realize in this form, I could have done the full campaign and just played, but also I don't know the value for you guys watching, certainly not in the numbers of views that it gets, and that's of course not why I do this, but if people really want to watch 12, 16 episodes, because there's 16 turns in a campaign, it might not have lasted that long before it was, one side looks like they were really going to lose, but, I don't know that was really, and it would have gone on for a really long time. I don't have the time to sit down and play that much, so, I would like to do that probably off camera and give it a real go on the full campaign scenario, just to kind of see what things are like without those constraints of time. But Volko, you don't need to hear it from me, but incredible job, as always. I can't wait to see the rest of this series unfold with Inferno and Planet Tangent and all the other ones that are coming out. They all look awesome, and this is another awesome addition. So thanks, guys, for watching. Who knows what will be next or when it'll be next, but hope you enjoyed this series, and make sure to subscribe and check out the other stuff, because we got a lot of fun games that we've played on this channel. Let me know if you want to see anything specific. If you want me to revisit, I've heard some people asking me to revisit Paths of Glory. So if you really want that, let me know. But always open to suggestions of games to play. So let me know. Hope you enjoyed it.